Filet-O-Fish, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for that. Making his Iowa prediction there, 10-2 with losses to Ohio State and Iowa State, which would, depending on your emotions as an Iowa fan in that rivalry game, is actually technically, mathematically, if you're looking logistically, the best situation. You might as well lose to whomever, in this case, Ohio State, is supposed to be the best team in the conference, and you might as well lose an out-of-conference game and finish 8-1 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, the only scary thing about that, like you brought up, or no, it was Don that brought this up. I'm sorry. On our preseason show, Mark, I'll get your opinion on this because the question got brought up after and I'll let people go over there to see what our predictions were. We went game by game and made our season predictions and picked every game individually. But I'll give everybody a hint. We came to the same overall record with the exact same loss or losses. So here's what I'll say about what Don said is, hey, if Iowa has 2 losses in the Big Ten, all right, then you're probably going to play in the Big Ten championship game. And at that point, is it possible you get knocked out in the Big Ten championship game? I think maybe, but if both losses come to Ohio, excuse me, let me rephrase that. If you're 10-2 heading into the Big Ten title game, 1 loss against Ohio State, and then see another loss against Nebraska, or another loss against Wisconsin or Washington, does that Big Ten title game, is that qualified as a win or you're out game? Does a 10-3 Iowa team with 3 conference losses and a trip to the title get in? I don't know. I would guess not, but I can't say that for certain. I think what's interesting is if Iowa were to lose to Iowa State and then Ohio State, and they're 11-1, would you rather at that point, 10-2, you're 10-2 at that point, but you're 8-1 in the conference, you may or may not get into the title game. With that scenario, would you not rather miss out on the title game because there's more to lose? Like, you have a better chance of losing anyways to Ohio State or Penn State. Wouldn't you rather roll the dice at 10-2 with an early loss to Ohio State and an early loss to Iowa State and 8-1 conference record? You don't have to worry about Indy. Yes. Right? So in that scenario, I'd rather miss out on the Big Ten championship game.
Yep. And this is why I've run the model through all the previous seasons, going through the 10-year college football playoff era and even before that. But the playoff era is the most reliable because there is a college football playoff committee. There wasn't one before that. You could go by the AP rankings and make an estimation. But you go through the 10 years, it is astonishing at how many times there is a 10-2 football team. This happened, I didn't count the number of times, but repeatedly, over and over. 10-2 teams playing in conference championship games that were safely inside the top 11, I will say, because we know that the 12th team, it could be ranked wherever as a group of 5, safely in that top 11 is 10-2. And then they lose the conference championship game and they plummet to 14, 15, whatever. Now, the only thing we don't know is if the playoff committee will treat that loss differently, even though they shouldn't. Their integrity should be the same throughout, whether they would treat it differently now that it means something in regards to the playoffs going forward. But the past tells us that, yes, you don't want to go to a conference championship game at 10-2 and lose.
And I'll stand by what I've said about Notre Dame. Until they join a conference, I think they ought to be given an extra loss in that final week of the season for choosing not to be in competition for a conference championship game. If we're going to punish other teams for losing a conference championship game, punish Notre Dame for choosing not to compete in one.
Now
that'll get them to join a conference.
That probably would do the trick, you would think, although they're pretty stubborn about it. Although from a perception standpoint and an evaluation, a clear evaluation standpoint, if Iowa goes and plays, whether it's Ohio State again or Oregon, whomever emerges as arguably the best team in the Big Ten, and even if they lose, if they play extremely well against, they could be playing the number 1 team in the country and let's say they lose 27-24, that should validate their season, if anything.
And I think my point, I saw somebody earlier say, well, 10-3 doesn't get them in. I think it's unlikely that first of all, I agree with that. If they go 10-3, they're not going to get in. That's why I don't think that's why if they're 10-2 with a loss to Iowa State, I'm hoping somehow they don't get in, because I think there's a good chance they do get in the Big Ten championship game with just one loss. But I'm not going to jump to a conclusion and say 10-2 without a trip to Indy doesn't get you in. Because I think if you lose narrowly to Ohio State on the road, and say you lose to Wisconsin, even maybe if you get throttled by Ohio State in early October, and then you lose a tight one to a Wisconsin, I think 10-2, you're right there. Maybe you don't get in, but I think you're right there. And certainly if you compete in an Ohio State game, I think you should be in with 2 losses. But again, we got to look to see what the rest of the conference looks like. But it's, I think, more than likely if their 2 losses come in conference play, they're not going to be in Indy regardless. So we're not going to be talking about 10-3 with 3 Big Ten losses. If anything, we're going to be looking at 10-3 with a loss to Iowa State, a loss in conference play, and then a loss in the title game.
You would not enjoy my predictions. I released those last week. I think I did those live. Yes. I picked Iowa to go 10-2 and miss the playoff.
Oh, who are the 2 losses to? You don't do that, do you? You don't go game by game.
No, I didn't go to game by game. They were both in the Big Ten, though.
Yeah, I do think it depends on what they look like.
I had them narrowly missing the playoffs, and I have 9-3 teams in front of them.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because of scheduling. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.